Few presidents have faced a crisis as monumental as Abraham Lincoln did. When he took office in 1861, the United States was on the brink of collapse, its very survival hanging by a thread. Lincoln was ridiculed, doubted, and underestimated by friend and foe alike, but his vision and perseverance would ultimately preserve the nation. And while he is celebrated for ending slavery, his greatest achievement may have been something less tangible, keeping the Union intact when the country itself seemed destined to fracture forever. Abraham Lincoln's journey to the presidency was shaped by humble beginnings, relentless ambition, and an extraordinary capacity for empathy and reflection. Born in a log cabin in Hardin County, Kentucky, in 1809, Lincoln grew up in poverty, facing the harsh realities of frontier life. He was largely self-educated, borrowing books whenever he could and teaching himself law, philosophy, and rhetoric. His early life instilled in him a deep understanding of hardship, resilience, and the value of opportunity, themes that would later define his leadership. Before the Civil War, Lincoln's political career was marked by careful study, measured speeches, and a commitment to principle. He served in the Illinois state legislature and a single term in Congress, where he opposed the expansion of slavery into new territories. He earned a reputation as a thoughtful debater and a man who could balance moral conviction with political pragmatism. This reputation would serve him well in the national stage. When Lincoln won the presidency in 1860, the nation was deeply divided. Southern states, fearing restrictions on slavery, began to secede almost immediately. 7 states formed the Confederacy before Lincoln even took the oath of office. The situation was unprecedented. A sitting president faced the potential dissolution of the Union, and there were no precedents to guide him. Lincoln's leadership was defined by an extraordinary combination of patience, firmness, and moral clarity. He understood that the survival of the Union required both careful strategy and the preservation of national morale. He avoided rash actions that could alienate moderate states or provoke premature conflict, while simultaneously preparing the nation for the inevitability of war. From the outbreak of hostilities at Fort Sumter, Lincoln faced constant pressure from generals, politicians, and the public. He had to balance competing priorities, preserving the Union, limiting casualties, managing public opinion, and gradually advancing the cause of emancipation. Every decision carried enormous risk, and yet he approached each with deliberate calculation. Lincoln's military strategy evolved over time, reflecting his keen understanding of both human and logistical realities. He appointed generals who could execute his vision, replacing those who could not, and worked closely with them to ensure coordinated efforts. He understood that victory required not just battlefield success, but also control of resources, supply lines, and public perception. One of Lincoln's most courageous decisions was the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. By declaring that enslaved people in Confederate-held territories were free, he transformed the war into a moral struggle as well as a political and military one. This decision discouraged foreign powers from supporting the Confederacy, bolstered Northern morale, and gave formerly enslaved people a reason to fight for their own freedom. Yet it was also a calculated risk. It did not immediately free all enslaved people, and it provoked fierce opposition from those who feared social upheaval or political backlash. Lincoln's eloquence and communication were equally vital to his leadership. Speeches such as the Gettysburg Address distilled complex political and moral ideas into concise, powerful statements that inspired a weary nation. He appealed not only to logic but also to shared values and common purpose, reminding Americans what they were fighting to preserve. His ability to unify diverse audiences, even in the midst of deep division, set him apart from other leaders in American history. Beyond strategy and rhetoric, Lincoln's empathy was a defining trait. He understood the suffering caused by war, and he carried the burdens of countless families who lost loved ones. He visited hospitals, corresponded with soldiers' families, and often agonized over decisions that could cost thousands of lives. This human touch strengthened his moral authority and reinforced the legitimacy of his leadership. Lincoln's perseverance was tested repeatedly. Military defeats, political opposition, and personal tragedies, including the death of his son Willie, would have derailed a lesser leader. Yet Lincoln remained focused on his ultimate goal, preserving the Union. He navigated crises with a combination of intellect, patience, and moral clarity that allowed him to make decisions that would seem impossible to many contemporaries. The final years of the war saw Lincoln overseeing a transformed nation. Union victories on the battlefield, combined with the commitment of freed and enfranchised individuals, gradually turned the tide. By 1865, the Confederate forces were collapsing, and the Union was emerging intact. Lincoln's leadership had not only preserved the United States, but it had also laid the groundwork for the abolition of slavery and the long, difficult struggle toward equality. Lincoln's assassination in April 1865 was a tragic conclusion to a presidency defined by courage and vision. Yet his legacy endured. The Union survived, slavery was formally abolished, and the nation retained the principles of democracy that he had fought to uphold. Abraham Lincoln is remembered not merely as the man who ended slavery, but as the leader who saved the Union. His presidency demonstrated the power of moral conviction, strategic vision, and human empathy in guiding a nation through its darkest hours. The story of Lincoln's leadership is a testament to the idea that even in the face of unprecedented crisis, determined, principled, and compassionate leadership can preserve not only a nation, but the ideals upon which it was founded. And that is why Abraham Lincoln remains one of the most revered figures in American history, the man who saved the Union. Lincoln's influence extended far beyond the battlefield and the abolition of slavery. He understood that preserving the Union required not only military victory but also the careful reconstruction of a fractured society. Even before the war ended, he began to consider how the defeated states could be reintegrated, how the federal government could balance authority with local autonomy, and how the principles of freedom could be extended to millions of newly emancipated people. His vision for reconciliation was pragmatic yet moral. Lincoln sought to avoid vindictive punishment of the South, recognizing that lasting unity could only come from a sense of shared purpose rather than retribution. He advocated for policies that would encourage loyalty, rebuild infrastructure, and restore civic life, understanding that the survival of the Union depended on healing as much as victory. Lincoln's personal resilience during this period was remarkable. The pressures of leading a nation at war, dealing with relentless criticism from Congress and the press, and bearing the grief of personal loss could have crushed any leader. Yet he maintained clarity of purpose, balancing the immediate demands of war with long-term considerations for peace and governance. His leadership style combined intellectual rigor, moral integrity, and an almost uncanny ability to empathize with people from every walk of life. Another key element of Lincoln's legacy was his skill in political navigation. He managed a divided cabinet, incorporating men with conflicting views, and turned potential rivals into effective allies. He understood the importance of compromise without surrendering principle, ensuring that political infighting did not undermine the broader goal of national survival. Lincoln also recognized the importance of symbolism. His public appearances, speeches, and written messages were carefully crafted to inspire unity and resilience. He knew that preserving the Union was as much about maintaining the morale and identity of the American people as it was about winning battles. Through measured words and deliberate action, he reinforced the ideals of democracy and equality even during the nation's most turbulent times. As the war drew to a close, Lincoln's foresight became increasingly evident. By guiding the Union to victory, he not only preserved the nation but also set a precedent for the role of the presidency in times of crisis. He demonstrated that moral courage, strategic thinking, and empathetic leadership could navigate a country through its most profound challenges. Lincoln's assassination in April 1865 cut short a presidency that had reshaped the nation, but his vision continued to influence Reconstruction and the struggle for civil rights. His commitment to unity and justice became a moral compass for future generations, reminding Americans that leadership is measured not only by power but by principle, empathy, and dedication to the common good. Ultimately, Abraham Lincoln's story is one of extraordinary courage, unwavering vision, and enduring influence. He saved the Union not merely through military victory, but through the combination of moral leadership, strategic foresight, and the ability to inspire a divided nation to believe in itself once more. And that is why Lincoln's legacy remains timeless, he preserved the United States, advanced the cause of freedom, and set a standard for leadership that continues to resonate around the world. In the final analysis, Abraham Lincoln's legacy is defined not by a single act or decision, but by the totality of his leadership during America's most perilous moment. He faced a nation on the brink of collapse, yet through vision, courage, and steadfast moral conviction, he guided it back from the edge. The Union survived, slavery was abolished, and a fractured nation began the long and difficult journey toward healing. Lincoln's leadership proved that preserving a country requires more than military might. It demands empathy, integrity, and the wisdom to balance principle with pragmatism. Even in death, Lincoln continued to shape the United States. His example of moral courage, resilience, and dedication to the common good became a standard for generations of leaders and citizens alike. He showed that one person, guided by conviction and guided by the values of a free people, could influence the course of history. Abraham Lincoln was more than the president who ended slavery. He was the man who saved the Union, preserved democracy in its darkest hour, and reminded the world that courage and principle can triumph over division and despair. That is the enduring story of Abraham Lincoln, the man who saved the Union.